Hi, I thought I would share with you an unfolding story which revolves around the number 9, a reduction by 1/3, about taking responsibility for one's own actions and also learning what we can control and what is outside of our control. So let me just explain. There's a lot that comes out of this. What I'm referring to is the recent Archaix video decoding the book of Revelations. That came about through some very underhand tactics by other YouTube channels, one of which is now learning that the results of those actions have actually backfired, not only on themselves, and I refer to J Dreamers here, but also what came out of it was basically, because of a missed email, 3 law enforcement agencies were tied up for 6 months. Now, if you know anything at all about the court system, it is basically a revenue collection system. So can you imagine how these agencies are not going to be happy wasting resources, manpower. It's cost them more than they've got back out of it. That saying about the enemy of your enemy becomes your friend comes to mind here. So effectively what happened was, nobody had checked this email that Jason had sent a year before within the whatever sheriff's office. And this all could have been avoided. But as it turned out, Jason was facing 15 days in jail, or if he agreed, it would be reduced to 11. So let's have a pause here. 15 reduced to 11. It's implying a reduction by 1/3. And it's led to being able to do a video on Revelations. There's a huge reveal that comes out of this. What I've said previously on this channel is that we're going through a period of the evening and the morning was the first day, and that pattern repeats. So what was enacted out in 2020, and many were coerced into going along with that script, the result effectively is going to be, we're going to round this up for argument's sake, if the world population is 8 billion, it reduces by a quarter down to 6 billion. It reduces by 2, so you've gone from 8 to 6. Then when you're left with 6, which would be about 2040, it reduces by 1/3, so it reduces by another 2. Now, I said on a video, I can't even remember, it was earlier this year, that you've got 15 years to get your act together. That turns out is not true, because 2036 would seem to be a cut-off date. Now, you'll have to watch the Revelations video on Archaix to understand that, what happens in 2036. It's a significant year. 3 and 6 makes 9. It's a number of completion. But notice also, the number 9, if you take 1/3 away, that's 3, leaving 6. So there's a self-referencing 36. You also have that same pattern repeated. The year 2070 to 2106 is also going to be 36 years, not 36 years of 365 and a quarter days, of course, but reduced by a third to about 243. I would say 0.7 because the number 7 comes into this as well. Things come in sevens. You'll probably find, if you reflect on your life, that you will see patterns of sevens. You will see patterns of nines as well. So I would suggest what is also being alluded from that is the year 2043, most likely in the month of July, because that reflects the 243.7, that something very significant is going to happen. What also emerges from this, you'll have an internal breaking of the seals. Certainly, if you could see through the script of 2020, I would say that at least one of your internal seals had already broken. You were very much in touch with your intuition. Now, interestingly, about the number 7, half of that is 3.5, or 2,160 days. This is what Neville Goddard talked about, the 1,260 days. It's reflected in the rebirth of the sun after 3.5 days. It's reflected in Genesis. I forget the passage. Sorry, I had to have a cough break there. And I'm not theorizing here at all. I'm not talking about concepts. I have been through this cycle of 7, this breaking of the 7 seals internally. I am the 7th soul, the 7th walking soul in this avatar. The avatar in 2 days' time attains 21,000 days, or shars. At the moment it is 20,998. Now, that is not to say that I expect on that actual day that something magical is, or dramatic is going to happen in the external, even personally. It's more just a marker, but what will unfold, I feel that it is leading somewhere very, very positive. It'll be a case of watch this space. Time will tell. So this reduction pattern from 8 to 6 to 4 in increments of 2, there's the evening with the loss of 2 billion, and then a further loss of 2 billion, there's your morning. But what a beautiful unfolding story that 11-day, almost like going into a meditation, into an isolation, allowed Jason to put together that Revelations video, the first of several videos. It's again, learn what you can change and what you can't change. There is an invitation always to pick a side, but if you take that middle ground and you say, okay, I can't get around this situation, I've either got to accept 15 days in jail or 11 days in jail if I agree to take this straight away. The time was used productively and of great benefit to the rest of us. So, all from those underhand tactics that have really backfired. And that their actions have backfired is they only have themselves to blame for their own actions. They didn't need to do that. Some of the channels may even have some good information, but rather than all pull together, no, whether it be jealousy over subscriber numbers or whatever, they went on the attack. Now they are getting the karmic payback, as it were. So you can look at this thing at a very superficial level that it was something negative, but look what's unfolded. It's turned out to be something positive out of it. Yeah, so 12, 60 days, so 1 and 2 and 6 makes 9. You've also got a reference to the 36. If you add the 1 and 2, you've got 3, leaving 6. It's all rather odd, but with even numbers. But it's a beautiful pattern to recognize, because it may be you are faced, or you come into a situation similar to Jason's, for example. What are you going to do? Again, I can talk from personal experience of putting out a thought into the universe of, I wish a weekend spiritual retreat. I got that through the system, and I spent the weekend from the Friday night till the late afternoon of Monday in the cells, held in custody. I've already explained all the thing to do with that. It was something so trivial, but it's like, I'm not playing this game. But I'm not accepting the fear. I can't get out of this. I can't change it. But I can use that situation and turn it into something positive. And how beautiful that it even works through the system. The last point I want to make here, and it ties on to what Jason has said about revelations. Now, there's a pattern. You've only got to look at any of the Dracula films, and what do you see? The servants of the Prince of Darkness, when their usefulness is over, they are discarded. Think of this in terms of someone who is self-serving with a lot of power and has a lot of support. But to go for something bigger, those supporters are going to be discarded. So what will unfold? All the financial malpractices and the group that have always been behind all of that, those servants of the synagogue of Satan, will find that their God that chose them will discard them, will just throw them away and destroy the whole structure behind it, because it's after something more. The way I have contemplated this is, if we think in terms of the way Neville Goddard describes it, the creator fell into the dream and is dreaming the dream. The counterpart, what you would consider as evil, has fell into the machine and has found a kind of everlasting life, but is trapped within that machine until it can find a way of downloading itself into an avatar. It lacks that ability, it lacks creativity, but it could possibly figure it out. I feel that's where the whole idea of the soul trap actually comes from. It's not a soul trap for us. It's like so many other stories externally are actually nothing to do with us. Again, reflected in Genesis, that this whole idea of man is guilty of this sin, of evil. Well, it makes it quite clear in Genesis that the tree of knowledge of good and evil existed prior to mankind in its present form. So you don't have to take the burden of shame and carry that around with you. It was never yours in the first place. But this system, this trickster, will carry on following this pattern, and it will discard anything once its usefulness is over. It doesn't care about its followers. It is only caring about itself. It is the ultimate in all the negative polarity aspects of things. And it will come about that it will be saying all the right things, it will be doing all the right actions, it will be celebrated, but that is the ultimate trick. It is important here to not pick a side. Just let the thing unfold, be aware of it. Don't look back, but keep an eye over your shoulder, as it were. Because where your attention goes, your energy will flow. And famously, I suppose, or infamously, the story is the story of Lot's wife who looked back, which is clinging to the past. It will petrify you, ultimately. That actually brings me on to a little sort of footnote here, and it's a beautiful exercise that I invite you to try for yourself. It's something I've spoken about before. It's not my idea. It comes from Rudolf Steiner, but I took it to a sort of another level and bringing in a different subset of frequency to it. Now he says about picture the triangle. Now draw the triangle. And what you'll find is you cannot draw the triangle. Because what shape is that triangle? Is it equilateral? Has it obtuse angled corners? Does it have acute angled corners? But in your mind, you can keep changing this. You can keep flipping it. Now try it with a ball. Now what are we talking about? What is the ball? Is it a golf ball? Is it a beach ball? Is it a rugby ball? And so on and so on. What colour is that ball? Now if you keep this fluid and keep it flowing in the mind, because that's something that's reflected in nature, it is in constant flux. So it's a beautiful exercise, because remember, practice makes things so they become second nature. You could say it's brain training as well. I feel it's a very good exercise, a good preparation for not 2040 but 2036. The 36 that make the 3 and 6 that makes 9. It's self-referencing in this calendrical system. It's self-referencing in the number of years between 2070 and 2106. Then you also have this cycle of 7, the 7 seals, and I feel what you have is a pattern of, you have an internal, followed by an external, followed by a collective external that follow the same patterns. It's whether we can perceive those inner layers and really see beyond what is presented to you with the physical eyes. For example, do you see the plant world? Do you see that it's green, or do you see that green is the lifeless image of the living? Again, that's using a Rudolf Steiner interpretation. Likewise, if you look up at a night sky, it is darkness. And as he explains it, that darkness showing through light creates blue. That can easily be proven just by looking at the sky. He also draws attention to that green is related to blue and yellow is related to red. So that follows also the same pattern with the chakra system, where the green, the blue, the violet and the indigo are the upper levels. Ideally, you want the heart in the higher self, in the higher chakras, than with the yellow, orange and red, the lower chakras that keep you in this physicality. So I'll put a link to that Archaix video in the description. I've also added it into a playlist called Revelations. You can hear Neville Goddard's interpretation, you can hear Manly P. Hall, and there's a couple of others in there. I cannot remember off the top of my head the names, but they're all interesting perspectives, and it's also, I feel, essential for your essence. The essence I see all. The essential is to learn to distinguish the internal story and the external story, and weigh up between the two. See how things are played out internally, see how things are played out on an individual level, and also how things will also play out on a collective level. So I hope that has given you a perspective. I hope that has helped with your recognition of patterns with numbers and things and what they reflect. And on a final note, as a sort of reminder, as it were, check the description box below this video and the things I can offer you to help you. So as always, unconditional love to you all.